Hello, I'm Daniela, and this is episode 6 of Historical Paranormal. In this episode, we'll explore the legend of the Skinwalkers as well as the history surrounding the 1878 Navajo witch purge and the infamous Skinwalker Ranch. Skinwalkers originate from Navajo legends. They're known as Yi Nalodoshi, which means, with it, he goes on all fours. This is a reference to the special ability to transform into a four-legged animal. It is said that the Skinwalker originates from accomplished evil witches or medicine men who reach the highest level of priesthood, but rather than using their powers for good, they use it for evil. It is generally accepted that Skinwalkers are mainly men. However, it is thought that elderly or childless women may possess these powers as well. Witchcraft itself is taboo in Navajo cultural beliefs and represents the antithesis of Navajo cultural values. However, in speaking of such things as Skinwalkers is strictly prohibited for fear of retribution. Some characteristics of Skinwalkers are they take on the form of a coyote, owl, fox, wolf, or crow, although they do have the ability to turn into whatever animal they choose. Skinwalkers can also transform by wearing the skins of the animals they transform into. They are said to be large, black, hairy humanoid figures with large, coal red eyes and leave large tracks. They can run very fast and are known to knock on windows and bang on walls. They are also known to peer through windows. Numerous reports have said they've been able to keep up with speeding vehicles, matching stories of those who reported seeing them along U.S. Route 666. These events are said to occur in the four corners of the United States, which includes southwest Colorado, southeast Utah, northeast Arizona, and the northwest of New Mexico. Skinwalkers are generally seldom caught when seen. Those who do manage to track down a skinwalker often learn their true identity and must pronounce the name of the evil one in full. It is said once this happens, they will get sick or die from the wrongs they have inflicted upon others. However, some believe there are more drastic measures that must be taken and requires the assistance of a powerful shaman who knows spells and rituals that can turn the skinwalker evil back upon itself. Another alternative is to shoot the creature with bullets that have been dipped in white ash. However, it is said that the shot must hit the witch in the neck or the head. In 1878, due to wars with the U.S. Army, the Navajo were expelled from their land and forced to march to Fort Summer in New Mexico in what is known as the Long Walk of the Navajo in 1864. There, the people suffered from bad water, failed crops, illness, and death, reducing their numbers drastically. After 4 years, the government finally admitted they had made a mistake, and the Navajo were allowed to return to their homeland in the Four Corners. During these years, were said to have turned to shape-shifting to escape the terrible conditions. In the meantime, the rest of the tribe were convinced that their gods had deserted them. Once the people had returned to their homeland, their conditions improved, but the dreaded skinwalkers from whom they blamed their years on the bleak reservations were still among them. And accusations of witchcraft began after someone found a collection of witch artifacts wrapped in a copy of the Treaty of 1868. The tribal members unleashed deadly consequences, which resulted in 40 Navajo suspected witches being killed in order to restore the balance of the tribe. One of the most famed locations for sighting skinwalkers is the Sherman Skinwalker Ranch. Its origins is tied to what resulted in the 1878 Navajo witch purge. The ranch is located in northeast Utah, in the Uinta Basin, far away from the Navajo reservation. 480-acre ranch is located about 3.5 miles southwest of Fort Duchesne, Utah, and borders the Ute Indian Reservation. The Uinta Valley Reservation was created for the Ute in October of 1861 by an executive order by former President Abraham Lincoln. The Uncompahgre Reservation, commonly called the Ouray Reservation, was created in January of 1882, and in 1886, the two reservations were merged to become the Uinta and Ouray Reservation. For more than 150 years, the Ute have lived here on the reservation that covers over 4.5 million acres. This place has a history of UFOs, aliens, cattle mutilations, and crop circles. Some who dwell on the Ute reservation have long thought the Navajo put a curse on their tribe in retribution for many perceived transgressions, and since then, the Skinwalkers have plagued the Ute people. The reason for this curse dates back stopped before the Ute moved to the reservation. At one time, the Ute and Navajo fought together against their common enemies. However, later when the Ute first acquired horses from the Spanish, they began to abduct Navajo people and sold them in New Mexico slave markets. Later, during the Civil War, some Ute bands joined with Kit Carson in a military campaign against the Navajo. This ended with the Navajo being expelled from their lands and forced to march to the reservation in Fort Sumner, New Mexico, called the Long Walk of the Navajo. Though the tribe was allowed to return to their homelands in the Four Corners area several years later, the Ute believed that the Navajo put a curse on the Ute tribe for their previous transgressions. Afterward, the Skinwalkers began to plague the Ute people. It is believed that the presence of Skinwalkers have been in the Uinta Basin for 15 generations, and some believe that they do not live on the ranch but rather dwell in the dark canyon located nearby. Another paranormal phenomena associated with the Skinwalker Ranch are sightings of unidentified flying objects dating back to the 1950s. Reports have been going for several decades. Some dispute the 1950s as being the earliest case. It is said in the late 1700s, when Spanish explorers were in search of the Spanish Trail, they passed through the Uinta Basin and reported seeing a craft over the sky and their campfire at night. Other UFO reports include, there have been hundreds of UFO reports, and many in which include strange fireballs and aircraft that ranged in size from 20 to 30 feet across to as large as a football field. Many of these UFOs were described as being round, ovular, cigar-shaped, or triangular. Some were described as being surrounded by a glowing green light, and others emitted wavy red beams. Others appeared to shoot colored lights from their underbellies. By the 1970s, the Utah Highway Patrol was getting so many UFO calls that the troopers stopped filling out incident reports. At the same time, local ranchers also began to report bizarre cattle mutilations. A retired science teacher named Joseph Jr. Hicks from Roosevelt, Utah, investigated more than 400 UFO sightings in the Uinta Basin. He found that the UFO appearances often coincided with the cattle mutilations. Over the years, many of the eyewitnesses saw living beings in the windows or portholes of UFOs. John Myers and his wife Edith Child Myers stayed on the property until 1987. They made no reports of any strange occurrences, although some of their neighbors did. The ranch stood empty for a whole 7 years before it was purchased by Terry and Gwen Sherman in 1994. The couple moved in with their 2 children and livestock. They were surprised to find that the previous owners had placed deadbolt locks on all the doors and windows, including the inside and outside. They had even placed bolts on the kitchen cabinets, and at both ends of the house there were iron stakes and heavy chains that had been installed. The Shermans had guessed that these were used for the previous tenants' large guard dogs. However, not too long after they had moved in, they spotted a large coyote or wolf in one of the pastures, which soon approached, making its way to a livestock pen. It then grabbed a calf by the nose, trying to drag it through the coral bars. Terry Sherman and his father then began to beat the animal to make it release the calf, but were unsuccessful. When they failed, Sherman shot the animal at point-blank range, but still the wolf held on to the calf. After another shot, it released the calf and just stood there, calmly looking at the men. After a few more shots, the animal trotted off. What was bizarre was there was no blood or sign of injury in the animal. The men then followed the tracks of the animal for about a mile before they suddenly ended. It had simply vanished. This was just the first foreshadowing of the events that would follow. A few weeks later, Gwen Sherman was in her car when she encountered a wolf that was so large its back was parallel with the top of the window. The large wolf was accompanied by a dog-like animal that she couldn't identify. Over the next 2 years, the Shermans as well as their neighbors reported seeing a number of strange animals in the area. These included exotic, multicolored birds not native to the region and tall, dark beasts that resembled a Bigfoot or Sasquatch. On one occasion, the Shermans saw a strange hyena-like creature attacking one of their horses, which they described as low to the ground, heavily muscled, weighing perhaps 200 pounds, with curly red hair and a bushy tail. As Mr. Sherman approached the animal, it vanished before his eyes. Afterward, they checked the horse and found numerous claw marks on its legs. A few months later, a neighbor reported seeing a similar beast running across their property. In 2 years, the family lost about 20% of their herd to cattle mutilations. They left their home 2 years later in '96 because of these experiences. Other horrors they experienced while staying at the ranch were crop circles, hearing voices calling from nowhere, inanimate objects moving before their eyes. Today, after they moved out, the ranch was purchased by billionaire Robert Bigelow, who owns Budget Suits, for $200,000 and was made into a home for a paranormal research group, the National Institute for the Discovery of Science, which operated until 2004. The organization was later replaced by Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies. In 2007, a secret unclassified government program, the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program, began investigating UFOs. The program had a $22 million budget, and Robert Bigelow received much of that money. Bigelow's findings were that the UFOs seen in the area were not consistent with current military aircrafts. In 2013, the film Skinwalker Ranch was made, loosely based on the accounts and activities at Utah's actual Skinwalker Ranch. And in 2016, Skinwalker Ranch was sold for $4.5 million to Adamantium Holdings, a shell corporation of unknown origins. Afterwards, a public road that had gone through the property was closed. The road is now guarded. Skinwalkers will forever remain a staple of Native American lore and historical paranormal encounters. The mystery of such creatures paired with other strange occurrences have and will continue to be challenged by skeptics alike. While for those who believe, there are just some things that are just too difficult to explain in the natural. I hope you enjoyed episode 6 of Historical Paranormal, and you haven't already viewed the first 5 episodes. You can check them out. Past episodes have covered everything from UFOs, Wendigo, US Route 666, the Jersey Devil, and cattle mutilations, which all intersect with skinwalkers. And there are other videos on this channel and my main channel, Dazzling One, that cover urban legends. Thank you for listening.